Did you know that Star Wars didn't really happen? It sure looks like it did. But nope, it was all actors, reading from scripts and pretending to shoot lasers and sitting in cardboard spaceships.
But John, if that's true, how come we never see George Lucas walking around with a little guy inside R2-D2 getting out to take a whiz? Doesn't that poke a hole in your narrative?
Okay, please stop interrupting me. Now half of these pictures aren't gonna make sense. And anyway, it certainly would if it wasn't for the magic of video editing. A process by which all of those parts are removed, and everything left is put together to create the illusion of a fantastic space adventure.
But if they can do that, couldn't they also do it with footage of real-life events in order to alter people's perception of what actually happened?
Gosh, I've never thought about it like that. There's an old episode of The Simpsons where Homer is accused of sexual misconduct, so he appears on this Dateline knockoff type show called Rock Bottom to clear his name. He makes his case that everything was a simple misunderstanding, which we know to be accurate, because we were there, creeping around in the bushes. We saw the whole thing. The show's editors then chop his statements into bits and rearrange them in order to make him seem like a monster in order to get more clicks. Right, this was in 1994, so not clicks, but ratings? Whatever they used back then. Unapologetic perverts make for much more riveting TV than people who just sort of admit to making innocent mistakes. So if God doesn't give you a pervert, you must become God and create a pervert! Rise! Rise, my pervert. Hey, remember when I said this episode was from 1994? Yeah. This practice was already old news to the writers of The Simpsons over 25 years ago, so it's a pretty established method of deception. The only difference between The Simpsons and the real world in this case was that these shows would never include that little dramatization may not have happened disclaimer at the end. That was clearly added only to help the audience understand the gag, because odds are good they're completely unaware of this practice and are in fact bamboozled by it themselves on a regular basis. The schlock editing job is also super exaggerated to sell the premise. There's more awkward jump cuts than a shitty YouTube vlogger. And the clock in the background is swinging around wildly like an epileptic porn star's dick. In reality, there's almost no way to actually spot deceptive video editing, unless of course you happen to be a very worldly and intelligent person who also just so happens to be a professional video editor. Seriously though, there are computer programs designed to detect when Photoshop has been used, and deepfakes are actually incredibly easy for an AI to spot. But there is no way to know what's been cut out of a video clip because it's not there. Was a flubbed line or some dead air removed? Or an entire paragraph that would completely recontextualize the speaker's point? Were the remaining clips even shot on the same day? Are they in the correct order? Was a voiceover from one news story pasted over footage from another? If you want a great example of footage and audio being chopped up and swirled into a giant tornado of yellow diarrhea, look no further than our old friend reality television. If you've never been on the receiving end of a botched lobotomy, you should be perfectly aware that reality TV is phonier than professional wrestling.
Wrestling isn't fake. A big part of my identity is wrapped up in professional wrestling because I dropped out of 5th grade due to complications from fetal alcohol syndrome.
That's actually so depressing that I'm just gonna let it go. Fine. So we all know that at least reality TV is fake.
Except for The Apprentice, of course.
Deceptive editing is used constantly on these shows. They'll take footage of a gal crying because she just got a phone call about her mother dying of cancer, and they'll make it look like she's reacting to another young lady talking shit about her. That other girl probably wasn't talking shit at all. She might have just been complaining about the service at brunch a week ago. But if you sling it together just right, you've got some high quality drama on your hands. You know what? Why don't I just show you how it works?
Hey, it sure was nice when Susie's mom came to visit. She's a funny lady. She's always like, don't trust Susie, she's a little liar. Always has been since she was a little girl. I know she's kidding, but that family is wild.
Yeah, she'd get Susie all wound up until she'd yell something like, shut the fuck up, you crazy bitch! Good times.
Now we simply cut out the actual context, add in a little voiceover, and Voila!
Tonight, tensions flare between Alexis and Meredith as they clash over their housemate Susie.
Don't trust Susie. She's a little liar. Always has been.
Shut the fuck up, you crazy bitch!
Stay tuned for more Bitches Be Trippin'.
Wow, just look at how the tone of that interaction completely changed. The music added a tense mood, and the narrator told us exactly how to feel about the situation. Except, that situation didn't occur at all. And it was so very easy to do. You could do shit like that with a free piece of editing software on your phone in like 5 minutes. If you only saw the edited version and not the full version, you would have zero reason to believe anything that you weren't meant to believe. Pretty scary, huh?
Well, it's a good thing that fair and balanced news organizations would never use that trick to warp public opinion in the favor of lobbyists whom represent destructive special interest groups which pay them to do exactly that.
Oh, you mean like convincing a bunch of poor people that putting a guy who bankrupted a fucking casino in charge of economic policy is gonna make them all rich somehow?
Exactly. Uneducated people living in impoverished rural communities have too much good old-fashioned common sense to ever fall for something like that.
Oh, Pander Bear, you're so good at your job.
Well, thank you.
I can't wait to perform a vivisection and find out what really makes you tick. We've all seen still images, which are fabricated to generate a false narrative. They're often circulated on social media to reinforce certain ideas. One of my favorites was this one. And it was a full refrigerator next to an empty refrigerator. And it said, poor family's refrigerator, middle class family's refrigerator. It is nothing more than two random images from Google image search, or maybe even the same refrigerator before and after being stocked, jammed together with random text laid over it. It is designed to reinforce a contrived stereotype of people on welfare living the cushy life at the expense of the hard-working American taxpayer who's left struggling to make ends meet. It was shared all over the internet by people who believe they are middle class, which is ironic because if you are struggling to afford food, you are not middle class. You are actually someone who should probably sign up for government assistance, which was designed to help your gullible, obstinate ass through these difficult times.
False. Those programs aren't made for people like me.
I can't imagine that you make any money. Have you applied?
I only make $1,200 a month in disability on account of my bad arm, and no one sends me anything for free.
How about I double the amount of disability you receive?
Hey, that'd be great. Oh.
You see, that image was made at the behest of someone who has multiple homes with multiple refrigerators that are always full. Someone very wealthy who would benefit greatly from the abolition of social programs to create a larger and more desperate lower class. To be overworked, to be thrown into for-profit prisons, to be handed over to the military-industrial complex, and otherwise generally abused for profit and maybe a little fun.
I thought this was about video editing, not memes. You're grasping at straws putting this little theory together.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing! I'm using a simple example to build a little context. This shit is pretty complicated, and trying to explain it to the kind of people that would fall for it in the first place is next to impossible. It's also more of a hypothesis than a theory. Anyways, if you can convince a substantial portion of the population to blame all of their problems on imaginary people and to start drilling holes in their own lifeboat in an attempt to drown said imaginary people, and all you have to do is spend 10 seconds in Photoshop, well, just imagine what you can do with the moving pictures. I'm gonna be honest here. I made this entire video just so I could talk about one specific thing I saw. I saw a rather infamous agitator and conspiracy theorist claim that an American tragedy was faked by the American government in order to pass anti-gun legislation. I dare not speak his name on this platform, but a friend of mine once referred to him as, "Oh, you mean that fat guy who sucks?" Yes, that's exactly the one I mean. And it was all nonsense. Gibberish littered with logical fallacies and fabricated evidence. The fat guy who sucks has since admitted himself that he was entirely wrong about the incident. I personally do not believe that it was an honest mistake or that his heart was in the right place, but I do feel vindicated in my repudiation of this ghoulish narrative from the very beginning. Around that time, I was just beginning my career as a video editor, and amidst all the hoopla, something caught my eye. Part of the evidence presented was a supposedly buried local news clip from that day. It featured aerial footage of government agents running through the woods, a narrator talking about multiple shooters, and a logo overlaid from a news channel local to the event. The footage and narration were from two separate news stories, neither of which were about the incident in question. Random shots of random guys running through the woods, and a newscaster talking about the war in Iraq on the other side of the globe, with the local news' logo fraudulently slapped on top. I could have thrown that together on my laptop, and millions of people saw it as ironclad proof of something that never happened.
Hey, that fat guy who sucks is being unfairly silenced for telling the truth. You are just spewing hateful rhetoric because you're a Prius-driving liberal who hates guns. So what if the news clip was a little fake? You can't make an omelet without
Breaking a few eggs? Listen, this isn't about the fat guy who sucks, or guns, or politics, or anything like that. And I'm certainly not explaining how to make deceptive video content just so you can run out and do it yourself. I want people to be aware that absolutely anything they see could easily have been manipulated to appear completely different from reality. And that it is often a form of propaganda, using your good faith and understanding as a means to an end. To show you that I'm not being partisan, I'll take a shot at Sacha Baron Cohen, TV's Borat. Sacha, my kind of guy. And his ruthless satire is top-notch. And he does an amazing job of terrorizing dipshits all around the world. He is also a master of deceptive video. His interviews as Ali G, for instance, appear to be him asking a litany of awkward questions of extremely high-level individuals. In reality, 90% of what he asks is totally normal, keeping the target engaged. And only sporadically does he dive into the completely absurd. Later, he edits all of the reasonable portions out, leaving only the insanity, and we are left scratching our heads wondering why these people are putting up with his nonsense. In the second Borat movie, there is a scene that implies that Rudy Giuliani is being creepy to a young female interviewer. This scene is clearly a shoddily stitched together walking corpse. The biggest clue is that all the weirdest and most incriminating dialogue occurs whenever people's heads are turned and you can't see their mouths. Which means anything could be added in after the fact to make the situation appear worse than it really was. Also, the timing is jumpy and awkward, and since the editing in most of the rest of the film is legit, it really sticks out as being messy. Almost like Homer's appearance on Rock Bottom. Almost. I'm not a big fan of old Rudy, and he could very well be some sort of pervert. I mean, who isn't? But this scene is a marvelously sloppy example of shady editing. So go take a look for yourself. And keep in mind that most of the time, the fuckery is much harder to detect. The best thing you can do is to always be aware that anything you see could be the result of this same process. And always remember that if something gets an emotional response out of you, it was probably designed to do so by someone who is painting a very different picture from what actually happened.
Thank you so much for watching, and remember to smash those like and subscribe buttons. Pander! I thought John shot you in the face!
That's editing, baby! I'm more mad at this than I even was before because the word family in there is like, poor families, French middle class. Oh, it's really unfair that this family can eat. Is that are you starving? You're on Facebook, you fucking asshole, and you're probably fat too.